Meanwhile, let's take a look at some other updates which have come in with regard to Afghanistan. On his return trip after chairing the UN Security Council briefing in New York, Foreign Minister Jaishankar stopped in Doha and discussed the Afghan situation with the Deputy Prime Minister of Qatar. Meanwhile, the NATO, which held a key emergency meeting yesterday, has urged those in positions of authority in Afghanistan to facilitate safe evacuations. On the other hand, Russian President Putin said that no terrorists from Afghanistan should be allowed in the neighboring countries, but the airport at the capital Kabul remains turbulent, with scores of Afghans waiting outside. Let's take a look at what the updates which are coming in with regard to the NATO. The foreign ministers of member states of North Atlantic Treaty Organization have in fact convened a meeting yesterday on the humanitarian and geopolitical crisis in Afghanistan. During the meeting, the NATO called for an immediate end to violence in the region. And what we can also see that the NATO also called on all parties to form an inclusive and representative government. Firm on its stand against terrorism, the NATO has as of now stopped all support to the current authorities in Afghanistan, that is the Taliban. So let me go across to my colleague Srinjoy, the Times Network's National Affairs Editor. Srinjoy, if you could just tell us that we can see multiple developments taking place. Biden's statement, which has been issued just a short while back, saying this is the most difficult evacuation, probably one of the most difficult evacuations in history. We've also seen developments taking place with regard to Jaishankar's meeting with the Doha, with the Qatar Deputy Prime Minister, and also the statements being made by Vladimir Putin. So if you could just tell us, there's of course a lot of reactions still coming in on this, but essentially the job on the ground is still very difficult in terms of getting nationals of other countries out, and also a lot of these Afghans who want to leave the country, to help them as well.
Well, first of all, Indians. There are still over several hundred Indians in Afghanistan, and India still has to get them back. India is trying very hard, and it's still a work in progress. That's really the first thing. And secondly, NATO. NATO has been supplying the Afghans with a lot of weapons. Not NATO, perhaps, but the American government, which of course is a part of NATO, the strongest force in NATO, with enough weapons. Now, despite all that, the Afghan army has melted away. Now, there is no point in giving weapons to the Taliban. The Taliban now has enough weapons, some of its own taken from the Pakistanis or given to them by the Pakistanis. And now you have the American weapons that were left behind. Now, as a result, the Taliban is well armed. Stopping weapons to the Taliban is really no point. They have enough weapons. That's really the second thing. Of course, it's a huge humanitarian crisis. Of course, Jaishankar will be speaking with people in Qatar. It's bound to happen because at this point, there are enough things happening. And very, very importantly, the effort is to get Indian citizens out. The effort is to get Afghans who want to come out. And the effort is ensure that there is peace in Afghanistan.
Right, Srinjoy, that is of course the work at hand, of course, to ensure peace in Afghanistan. But there are several nations which are still battling in terms of trying to get their nationals out from that. Biden, of course, just saying a short while back that this is probably one of the most toughest, largest evacuations, airlifts in the history. Thank you so much for joining us with that.